By this point in the season, you already know all about the latest and greatest sleds from each manufacturer, and you've probably got a pretty good handle on our opinions of each of them. There's some older technology and a lot of new tech floating around in the industry right now, and I think we've covered most of it pretty thoroughly. For sure, over the past few seasons, we've talked more than enough about all the new chassis and platforms. So today, instead of doing a typical shootout where we take a look at 3 competing vehicles, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to take a look at the industry's 3 largest 2-stroke power plants and do a shootout with them. We're also going to call this one a seat-of-the-pants shootout, meaning we're going to focus more on the actual real-world user experience versus focusing only on empirical data. Why do it this way? Well, a seat-of-the-pants shootout will tell you exactly what you can expect to experience when you run one of these power plants yourself. Numbers and statistics can only tell you so much. What we think is truly most important is what an engine is like on the snow in your backyard. Plus, we know you keep coming back here to hear our opinions on stuff, not to hear us read brochure and EPA copy. By focusing on just the motors themselves, we're hoping you're going to get a clearer picture of what you can expect from each of these power plants. We're going to leave deciding which of these chassis fits you best up to you. The 3 engines we're going to look at today are Arctic Cat's 8000 series, Skidoo's new 850 E-TEC 2, and Polaris's Cleanfire 800HO. Obviously, there is not a Yamaha in this shootout because they don't offer an 800 class 2-stroke. To make things as simple and easy to understand as possible, we're going to break down the evaluation of each engine into 6 categories. They are horsepower, torque, power curve, vibration, cleanliness, and economy. To keep things moving along, we won't spend a lot of time explaining each category. They are pretty self-explanatory, so let's just jump right in. Arctic Cat's 794cc 8000 series twin cylinder is the oldest of the bunch. It's got a long history, and we've tested it in countless platforms. It's also the least sophisticated, employing only a pipe sensor to monitor the system. Polaris's 795cc Cleanfire semi-direct injected high-output twin is the second oldest of the bunch. The base of this motor has been around for quite a while, but it received a pretty significant upgrade when it was dropped into the Axis chassis and received its HO moniker. Obviously, the new kid on the block here is Skidoo's 849cc E-TEC 2 direct injected unit. It's also the most sophisticated. The horsepower category is really the simplest to judge. Whichever one has more wins. The hard part is knowing just how much horsepower each really has. To determine this, we're pulling information from manufacturers' claims as well as general industry consensus based on numerous dyno tests from numerous different sources. Arctic's 800 has always been claimed to put out right around 160 horsepower, which is believable and is a number that's well accepted in the industry. While Polaris has never made any official horsepower claims for its Cleanfire 800HO mill, it's widely accepted in the industry that it puts out between 163 and 165 ponies. Skidoo's new 850 hasn't been around as long as the others, so there hasn't been as much independent testing, but between Skidoo's own claims and what we've heard elsewhere, 165 plus is more than realistic. Obviously, in this category, the Skidoo gets its first point. The next thing we're going to look at is torque, because in reality, this is what you're going to feel most with pretty much any engine. Unless you spend all of your time running lakes, it's an engine's torque that gives you that arm-stretching thrill while you're squeezing it from corner to corner. Here, the Arctic Cat 800 is really lacking. It's a very peaky engine that makes its power at the upper RPM ranges. The Polaris is a stump puller. It makes power immediately and it pulls hard. Despite having a more than 50cc advantage, Skidoo's 850 doesn't feel any more impressive than the Polaris in terms of bottom end. What's interesting to note is that actual dyno-measured torque says the Skidoo has more than the Polaris, which only serves to validate the seat-of-the-pants style of this shootout. The numbers really are only half the story. In reality, these two could tie here, but because the Polaris has fewer cc's than the Skidoo, it's actually doing more with less, so we think it deserves the point. We think an engine's power curve is a hugely important aspect of the engine's overall performance. Massive power and torque that is delivered abruptly or in surges isn't easy or fun to control all day. Arctic's 800 has a very top-end bias power curve. On the bottom, it's very flat, and it doesn't start to rise until the upper end of the RPM range. Now, this doesn't necessarily make it hard to ride, but it's also not relaxing to ride either. The Polaris 800 power curve is very linear. From engagement to full throttle, the power seems to flow evenly at all times. This makes it an extremely easy and pleasant engine to hang on to. Ski-Doo's 850 is more abrupt down low, but after that initial hit it smooths right out and is linear all the way to the top like the Polaris. After considerable seat time on these two vehicles, the consensus is that the power curve of the 800 Cleanfire is just slightly more linear than that of the E-TEC 850. Now it's just by a little bit, but it is noticeable, so the Polaris gets its second point. Big bore twin-cylinder engines are notorious for vibration. It can be controlled by counterbalancers and vibration-absorbing engine mounts, but some setups work better than others. Arctic Cat's 800 twin doesn't vibrate overly hard, but because it revs so high all the time, it does suffer from a high-frequency vibration that can have a numbing effect on your hands after a really long pull. It's not unlivable or awful though. Polaris's twin definitely vibrates at idle, which could lead you to believe it's gonna vibrate like crazy under power. But once you get the RPMs up, the vibration all but goes away. The limited build 850 Ski-Doos last season suffered from huge vibration issues, but the production models this season have had it smoothed out considerably and it now vibrates less than the others, so the E-TEC gets its second point here. Engine cleanliness is somewhat of a hot-button topic these days. With the EPA tightening the restrictions more and more on snowmobile engines, people are paying more and more attention to what's coming out of their snowmobile's exhausts. Arctic's 800 is normally injected. It has only a pipe sensor to make adjustments. It smokes a lot more than the others, and you can tell it doesn't run as clean. The Polaris Cleanfire engine is semi-direct injected and has numerous sensors. It doesn't smoke much at all and runs very clean and smooth. There is no question though, the direct injected 850 E-TEC is the king of clean. You almost never see blue smoke coming out of its exhaust, and it runs like it's practically an electric motor. What's interesting is, again, if you look at the EPA numbers measuring hydrocarbons, the Polaris actually produces less, and it and the Ski-Doo are tied for carbon monoxide. We all know the EPA numbers are generated in a lab under controlled conditions. Here again, they only tell half the story. The E-TEC runs cleaner in all the ways that matter most in the real world, so it gets the point here. Next, we're going to look at something we hear more about than anything else when it comes to snowmobile engines: economy, or more specifically, how easy or hard they are on gas and oil. Despite being a relatively low-tech engine that doesn't run as clean as the others, Arctic's 8000 series is actually not that bad on gas. It's not great, but it's definitely not terrible. It does use its fair share of oil though. Polaris's Cleanfire mill has traditionally been an overachiever when it came to economy. Previous versions could use very similar amounts of fuel to Ski-Doo's E-TEC 800s, and oftentimes they would use less oil. But thanks to E-TEC 2 direct injection and an all-new oil management system, Ski-Doo's 850 is just a miser on fuel, often taking up to 20% less than the Polaris when they've both been run hard. And it'll go forever on a tank of oil. There's no question, Ski-Doo's 850 gets the point here, as nothing so far has even come close to this kind of economy. So now that we've covered all of our 6 categories, it's time to take a look at how each of these sleds stack up. A quick tally reveals that Arctic Cat's 800 came away with 0 points, but this definitely doesn't mean it's not a good motor. It's just not a great motor when compared to the other two. Of course, this all needs to be taken with a grain of salt, as we've already seen and felt Arctic's new C-TEC 2 800, and it's fantastic. It's got tons of bottom-end torque, it runs cleaner, and is more efficient. Its power curve is more linear. Basically, it would be extremely strong competition for the other two, and could have potentially changed the outcome of this shootout. Polaris's Cleanfire 800 came away with 2 points which were focused around rideability traits of the motor. There's absolutely no question this engine is stout down low and its power delivery is ultra smooth and controllable. But what's also undeniable is that Ski-Doo's 850 E-TEC 2 with its 4-point total is the winner here. Not just because it's new technology that we're all excited about. It really is a big step forward in two-stroke engine design, and its performance and rideability characteristics are extremely close or on par with the Cleanfire 800. But on top of that, it's also the cleanest running, most efficient, and most solidly built of the bunch. When you put all three of these sleds on the snow side by side, it doesn't take long to come to the conclusion, as we did, that Ski-Doo's 850 E-TEC 2 is the very best big bore two-stroke engine this industry has ever seen. If you've enjoyed this video and would like to see more content from SnowTrax TV, click the like button and subscribe to the SnowTrax TV YouTube channel.